Hey everybody, it's GauntletX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today I'll be playing another Premier Draft of Brothers War. Without further ado, let's get into the Pack 1, Pick 1. We've got a nice flexible card here, the Thran Spider, just a powerful colorless rare that can fit into any deck. 3 mana for a 2/4 with reach. When it enters the battlefield, you and an opponent each create a tapped Powerstone token, but you get a nice mana sink to use that on. You can spend 7 mana to look at the top 4 cards of your library, reveal an artifact from among them, and put it into your hand. And there are tons of artifacts in this format, so pretty nice undercosted little reach spider here that gives you a nice mana sink ability to use your Power Stone on. So I like the Thran Spider a good amount, and to be honest, the rest of this pack is pretty unexciting in general, so pretty easy Thran Spider pick. Pack 1, Pick 2 now, we've got a Yoshin Frontliner, which is nice for the blue-white soldiers, aggro archetypes. This is good in really any aggressive deck in white where you can unearth it pretty easily, but that is where it is at its best since it's also a soldier. Paratrooper is also nice in those decks. Disfigure is a nice black removal spell for early game creatures. Blanchwood Prowler is a good green value play. Lots of solid stuff here. I'll just go for another colorless card, another artifact to go with the Thran Spider. This is one where you really do want to be playing white for it to be good. A lot of the other Unearth cards, it's okay if you're just like splashing in their Unearth costs, but the Frontliner, because it's such an aggressive little Unearth ability, it's definitely a lot weaker if you have to wait to hit your splash color to unearth it, so a little more restrictive than taking a completely colorless card, but I do think that the card is pretty good. And now we can just follow it up with another Yoshin Frontliner, but it's got some fierce competition here, because this pack we see the kind of Unearth cards that I really like, which are the Scrapwork cycle of Unearth cards, the Scrapwork Rager, the Scrapwork Mutt, and the Scrapwork Cohort. There's no Scrapwork Cohort in this pack, but those three all have really good enter the battlefield effects, so even if you unearth them on a board state where you can't really attack in with them with the haste from the graveyard, you're still getting some amount of value bringing them back from the graveyard. So I like all the Scrapwork cards quite a bit, but Scrapwork Mutt I think is one of the best ones. Just really cheap to get it on the board, really cheap to unearth it, and it's very splashable for the unearth cost as well, because even if you have to wait till really late in the game, being able to discard a card and draw a card is a pretty relevant ability at any point, because if you don't hit your red source till like turn 10 or something, then that's fine. At that point you probably have an extra land or two to discard to draw the extra card, so I do think the Scrapwork Mutt is pretty great. And now, since we've stayed pretty much colorless so far, we are free to take one of these really powerful colored spells. We could also still just take another Scrapwork Mutt and stay wide open here, but I think it might be a good opportunity to scoop up something like a Junkyard Genius or a Zephyr Sentinel. Zephyr Sentinel, really strong card again for that blue-white soldiers archetype, and the Junkyard Genius, a very strong card for black-red sacrifice, which is an archetype that makes great use of unearth creatures and Power Stones, both of which we have one already. We've got one Power Stone from Thran Spider, one unearth creature with Scrapwork Mutt. The Frontliner also unearths, but if we're in black-red, obviously it'll be a little harder to unearth the white creature. I think I'm going to take Junkyard Genius here, but I could definitely see just taking Scrapwork Mutt and staying wide open. I just think Junkyard Genius is the strongest card, even if it is the most restrictive by a lot. And here we have no option but to take a colored spell here. We can't just scoop up another artifact. So, well, this is a really bad pack. I think the only like good card is Gurgling Anointer, so we just take that. Bushwhack is like fine. Giant Growth, Lorn's Escape are fine. Desynchronize is fine. There's like some fine stuff here, but nothing like good except Gurgling Anointer. This is a pretty good card if you can consistently draw cards in your deck. You just have to have a bunch of cards that draw a card when they hit the board, like Scrapwork Mutt, in which case this can keep getting bigger, and then when it dies it reanimates something from the graveyard. So pretty spicy card. Does require some building around though, so not the most open card ever. Alright, all of these artifacts are pretty weak. Clay Revenant is just very slow to reanimate it, to recur it. 3 mana to put it back in your hand, 1 to replay it, and it hits the board tapped when you do. You can only replay it at sorcery speed, obviously, so not a big fan of that. And the other artifact creatures are just pretty weak. I'll just take a Skyfisher Spider here, which is a really nice card. There's a lot of expendable creatures to sacrifice for this. Again, Unearth effects let you unearth your creature, then sacrifice it to the Skyfisher Spider. Or you could have just like a 1/1 token. There's a lot of 1/1 tokens in the format as well. Skyfisher Spider, super strong card, definitely the pick. Now I can take a Disfigure here because we're definitely in black. We've got Gurgling Anointer and then two different black gold cards. We've got black red or black green. So we can take Disfigure here. It's pretty open. Could also take Levitating Statue. I like this a lot in blue decks in the format. Don't love just immediately running it in any other archetypes though. So I don't think I'm taking Levitating Statue over the Disfigure. There's a Whirling Strike for a solid aggressive combat trick in red-black, or mediocre green fight spell, mediocre, well, actually this is a really good green combat trick. This does so much stuff. So there's like a pretty good red combat trick and a really good green one. We're just as tied to each color. I'd probably take the green combat trick. Because we're going to be in black no matter what, I don't really want to take any green fight spells, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong casting a fight spell that would make us want to just play a bunch of black removal spells when we have access to them. Because with a fight spell, if I try to cast this and my opponent bounces whatever creature I'm trying to fight with, then they just completely counter my fight spell and bounce my creature at the same time. Same with if they have instant speed removal, they completely counter my fight spell and kill my creature. It's just really easy to get 2-for-1 playing a fight spell, even if it is like one that gives you a huge buff. So you kind of just can't use them unless your opponent is tapped out, or you just have to use them. You have to go for it. Attack's pretty weak here. Take Infiltrator or Whirling Strike. I'll take Infiltrator since we're more tied to black than red. And we are at the kind of filler point of the draft, it looks like. A bunch of stuff we're pretty unlikely to play. Powerstone Fracture. That could be a solid removal spell, whichever direction we end up in. It's a late Blanchwood Prowler. Pretty happy to see that. So maybe we are green-black over red-black, which is a little sad because we got that Junkyard Genius like pick 4, which was pretty spicy. But just haven't seen a lot of great red. We've seen a lot of good red combat tricks, but really nothing else in the color. Whereas in green, Perimeter Patrols are pretty filler, but we've seen a ton of Blanchwood Prowlers, Gaia's Gift, and the Skyfisher Spider was even later than the Junkyard Genius. So it does feel like green's a little more open than red. Now we can take a solid black aggro dork. 2 mana 3/1, can't block. For 6 mana, you reanimate it from your grave with some +1/+1 counters. With 1 +1/+1 counter. Okay, so 6 mana, it comes back as a 4/2 that can't block. Alright, well it's only good if you're like really aggressive, so maybe it's not that exciting. And the only thing really competing is Disfigure though. Unless we want to just jump ship and move on to blue-red, where Third Path Iconoclast is great. That's probably better than Disfigure by a tiny bit. Not a ton, though. Take a Transmigrant there. Pretty great card to sacrifice to Powerstone, Fracture, and Skyfisher Spider and stuff. There are some pretty good pieces of mana fixing in this format. Lots of colorless mana fixing. If we get a little bit of that, then we could throw Junkyard Genius in here, so I'll leave him in for now. Energy Refractor is my favorite piece of fixing in the set, I think. At least at common. There are the retro framed artifacts. There's one in every pack that's just like a reprint of a classic artifact. Those are pretty high variance because there's so many of them. So I'm sure that there's like at least one of those that I like more than Energy Refractor, but they're just things you're going to see so much less often. Energy Refractor is just a common in the main set, so that's my favorite fixing. 2 mana for an artifact, draws you a card, and you spend 2 mana to get a mana of any color out of it. Pretty solid. Could take Scrapwork Cohort here, a lot easier to cast up front than the Junkyard Genius, but I already have 1 Genius I'm trying to hopefully splash. Probably scoop up a second one, just a very powerful card, very powerful sack effect, and even without it, just a 2/2 that makes a Power Stone is solid. I'm going to take the Genius over the Cohort. Excuse me, I'm going to take the Genius over the Cohort, but I could definitely see Cohort being a very reasonable pick there too. Well, there's a black-red rare, which is cool, but it doesn't really do anything. It makes all of our artifacts in our graveyard have Unearth, but the majority of our artifacts in our graveyard are already going to have Unearth, and otherwise it's just like a 5-mana 4/4. Makes it hard for our opponent to target our stuff, but 5-mana 4/4 is pretty understated, especially with a restrictive mana cost like a 2-colored spell has. Could take Sentinel Stalwart here. Go green-black at the core and use Stalwart to splash in off-color Unearth effects and Junkyard Geniuses. That would be pretty nice. Gnawing Vermin is another very reasonable pick as the best card in our core color, but I'm going to go for a Sentinel Stalwart build here to get these Junkyard Geniuses into the deck. Now we've got another Scrapwork Mutt, which is beautiful. I will take that over mainly Gix's Caress, I think, which is a very nice piece of disruption. Discard spells that let you pick any non-land card are kind of where it's at. The reason so many discard spells are just pretty bad and limited is that either your opponent picks what they're discarding, or they're very restrictive, like non-creature, non-land card like Duress, or just a creature like Divest. The discard spells where you choose anything in their hand actually tend to play pretty well, especially when they slap on a little bit of extra value, like a Powerstone with Gix's Caress, or a 2/2 army with Torment of Golem in the latest set. So I actually think that card is pretty good and worth mentioning. We can very easily take that Energy Refractor I was talking about now to get these Junkyard Genii in here, and the Unearth effect of the Ocean Frontliner, and maybe some other stuff. Okay, nothing going on in here. Pack is pretty empty all around. I'm not going to end up playing any of these cards, so I'll just rare draft the uncommon. Okay. I already have 3 perimeter patrols. I am not going to play a 4th. Could play an Onulet. I've got no 5-mana creatures yet, and we can splash in the Unearth easily. If I want to try to push to red-black at the core and cut the green mostly, I could take Blast Runner. That would be a pretty speculative pick, because Onulet can definitely make the cut if we want it to, but it's kind of filler, whereas Blast Runner, if we don't get the full pivot to red-black, is just not going to happen. I'll still go for the Blast Runner, though, because I think Onulet would be very filler overall. So we'll make a speculative pick there. I don't think I'm missing too much by doing that. This pack's pretty bad. We're not going to have enough swamps for Corrupt to be great. Only really like Corrupt in mono black for the most part, is where it's really good. Or there is an artifact that makes all of your lands whatever land type you want. It can be pretty spicy in a deck with that. But I'll just take a Gaia's Gift. Very empty pack here. I'll take a Shoot Down, which, when you're really lacking on removal, is main deckable in this format because of the amount of artifact creatures. So if your opponent has an artifact creature, or if your opponent has a flying creature, then you get to use it as removal. Load up our sideboard with whatever random nonsense we see at the end of the draft. Well, at the end of the pack, we've still got a whole 3rd pack to go here, which is beautiful. Where we can really get things all together here. Alright, I think... Oh my god, 3rd Junkyard Genius? I kind of want to take Clay Champion. Requires a bunch of green mana, though. If I spend double green and 2, then this is a 5/5. If I spend 4 green mana, then it's an 8/8. I guess it's just like one big creature, and it's a very hard mana cost, because if we're playing green, we're definitely green-black splash red, where we're not going to have a million green sources. Elsewhere Flask could help with that if we wheel this card, but I doubt we do. Might be better to just take another Junkyard Genius and go all in on that. Hero of the Dunes is another splashable, super powerful card, though. I'm going to go for a 3rd Junkyard Genius. Definitely one of the first 3 cards in that pack. Those are all exceptional. Now we have a Scrapwork Mutt, great Unearth card. Ashnod's Harvest is another great aggressive Unearth card. Giant Cindermaw is just a really good aggressive red card. And then Energy Refractor for splashing stuff in. I think with the look at our mana curve, even if I do manage to become just red-black, I'm looking more for 2-drops and 1-drops than 3-drops, because of Triple Genius mostly. I'm pretty full at 3 mana, so as good as Cindermaw is, I'd rather just have the really good aggressive 2-mana card. 3 power, 2 mana, plus has Unearth. We'll take the Ashnod's Harvester. Scrapwork Mutt might be a little better because of the flexibility of its enter the battlefield effect, but I'm going to go for the more aggressive, higher power card as we try to push into red-black aggro here. Now we have Gix's Caress, which is fine. Emergency Weld, which is fine. Emergency Weld's actually probably pretty sweet with triple Junkyard Genius if we get to be red-black. And if we don't, it's really sweet with Skyfisher Spider, because you pick up the Skyfisher from your grave, get a 1/1 to sacrifice to its ability, and then just sacrifice that 1/1 to its ability to blow something up. I think Emergency Weld is pretty sweet here, and flexible. Combat Courier would be solid in the red-black deck, because it gives us something we can sacrifice for our cards that care about that. Plus we could splash in the Unearth, but I'll take the Emergency Weld, since I think it would be good in our red-black or green-black build. However things happen there. Now we take a Gix's Caress, I suppose. Reconstructed Thopter would be okay. Not super exciting. I'll take the Gix's Caress here. Sibling Rivalry, fantastic, with 3 Junkyard Genius. We do have to have a lot of mana to do it, but for 4 mana we steal an opposing creature, and then for 3 mana we sacrifice that creature before we have to give it back to them. Seems pretty good. Another Gix's Caress. So Obstinate Baloth in green, good lord. If I cut green, 20 playables right now. Close. Only 13 creatures, though. We'd want more creatures than this, ideally. The triple Junkyard Genius, though, is so tempting towards that. I think Baloth is good enough, though, to still take a green card. We'll see if we can get 3 more solid black or red playables, but if not, now I have a juicy Obstinate Baloth for the green-black splash red deck. Okay. Yeah, I guess Unleash Shell is solid here. I've got 2 removal spells right now, Disfigure and Powerstone Fracture, so there's another one. Arbalest Engineers would be good in the Jund build, which might be better, but when I have like triple of the Incredible Signpost uncommon, that is like just such a tempting prospect for me, where I'm like, oh, if I could just be a streamlined deck in these 2 colors. I've got their Incredible Uncommon. I've got 3 copies of it. We just go all in on that. Got some other filler stuff I could play, like Transmigrant Altar or Ashnod's Intervention. They're pretty bad, but if I need to fill the deck out with those, I can. I don't like Onslaught much. I don't like Trenchstalker in this archetype. It's Energy Refractor or Wellspring. I think I'd rather take Refractor. And maybe we just splash in a little bit of green instead, throw in a Skyfisher Spider or 2. I guess I only have 1 Skyfisher Spider, but you know what I mean. Throw in a Skyfisher Spider and maybe something else alongside it, now that we have double Refractor. Seems fine. I don't think I'm an Aeronaut's Wings deck. Although Carrion Locust is not super exciting. That is a late Zephyr Sentinel. I think this is probably what I'll do. We just run this deck splashing in a Skyfisher Spider. Because the rest of our green is mainly just solid support if it's our main color. Outside of Obstinate Baloth, that card is very good, but it's also double green, so it's not splashable. So, I mean, the biggest reason to be green is Skyfisher Spider, which is a splashable card. Other than that, it's like we've got the mana fixing Blanchwood Prowler, which is kind of like, it's not ramp because it doesn't put the land on the board, but it makes sure you draw another land. So just cards that make our mana more consistent, and then some dorky creatures. No huge reason to be in green outside of the spider. So if we just play red, black, and splash the green, boom, we get most of the green value outside of the Baloth, which I think is good here. So we need to cut 3 cards. I don't think we can cut any creatures here. We're at 16 and we want to be a pretty aggressive deck. And I know I can type in TCR, but if I do that, then Arena lags out, as you can see by it just taking forever even to sort the cards. Because that bug showed up when Lord of the Rings got added to Arena and never got fixed yet. We're still waiting. Alright, well, this actually looks pretty good. That curve is not bad at all. It's pretty aggressive too. We've got the double mutts to get out of any mana flood. I don't think there's any terrible creatures in here. There's definitely like a little bit of filler, like Infiltrator without a ton of sacrifice, which we don't have a ton of sacrifice. Blast Runner without a ton of sacrifice, which we don't have a ton of sacrifice. I think Infantry's pretty solid. Anointer's solid. Overall, it's a bunch of solid stuff here. What are the 3 cuts here? How many cards do I have that like the Energy Refractor? The Gurgling Anointer likes it because it triggers when we draw a card. The Yotian Frontliner needs it to get reanimated, and the Skyfisher Spider needs it, so I think we gotta keep the Energy Refractor mostly because of the Skyfisher Spider. Definitely want to keep our removal, Unleash Shell, Powerstone Fracture, and Disfigure. So some combination of these get cut. Emergency Weld I think is quite valuable with Triple Genius and Skyfisher Spider, so we're going to keep that in, count it as like a 4-mana creature. 3 cuts now. Sibling Rivalry. I think Sibling Rivalry plus Junkyard Genius is just so cute that I'm not going to pass up on that, so keep the Sibling Rivalry in here, cut a Soul Guide Lantern, which actually gets rid of one of our sacrifice cards that goes with the Goblin Blast Runners. So that's a little awkward, not super ideal. We're mainly just relying on triple Junkyard Genius to go with Goblin Blast Runner. We have 3 Junkyard Genius, 1 Skyfisher Spider, and 1 Powerstone Fracture for ways to sacrifice things if I don't keep the Lantern in. That's a little sad. But I think I like Gix's Caress more. I think because our curve stops at 4, I am going to cut, I guess I've got 1 Unleashed Shell, but I'm still going to cut like 1 land here, probably a forest, and then 2 of these 3 cards. And I think I would rather just have a Gix's Caress than a Soul Guide Lantern, even if, I don't know, it's like 3 cards that really get that sacrifice value, the Infiltrator and the Double Blast Runner, so maybe, like, I'm never going to Gix's Caress on turn 3 because I have 6 3-drops in this deck, so maybe we do go for just entirely cards that affect the board. Soul Guide Lantern doesn't, but it kind of does when we sacrifice it, because it adds power to an Infiltrator or a Blast Runner. Plus it cycles itself away, which helps dig to the next land. Yeah, I think we're probably too aggressive for the Caresses, so we'll just drop those and run the Lantern over the 17th land. Make sure that our mana base is good. We've got so many artifacts in here, which is pretty helpful. And no double black cards. We've got 1 double red card. So let's see, 10 black, 8 red, 1 green. Probably want to go even split on black-red because of that Unleashed Shell. Although with double Energy Refractor, that can help with that too. Yeah, maybe. There's a few more black cards than red cards, so just have 1 more black source than red sources and rely on Energy Refractor for the second shell. The second red mana for the shell, potentially. I mean, not rely on it, but it helps with it. I think that's fine. I think Arena did an okay job with the auto mana here, and we will call it a deck there. Alright, here's a look at our deck list for today. It is a Rakdos Sacrifice deck with a small green splash for a Skyfisher Spider. We've got a lot of the premium cards for this archetype, in particular 3 copies of Junkyard Genius being an absurd card. It's going to create a Power Stone when it hits the board to help ramp into other stuff, as well as give us an expendable artifact to sacrifice for its own ability, giving our whole board +1/+0 menace and haste. So if we have a wide board state of basically any creatures, if we use this ability a couple times in a row, we should be able to close out most games. So that is our big kind of win condition here, the triple Junkyard Genius. We've also got a couple Blast Runners, which work really well with a Junkyard Genius on our board. Gixian Infiltrator is another decent synergy with that card, and a good amount of Unearth, which also works well with Junkyard Genius, because we can unearth the Mutt and then sacrifice them since they're going to die in our end step anyway. So 2 Scrapwork Mutt, an Ashnod's Harvester for great Unearth stuff, Laser Lash Transmigrant for a pretty slow but also Graveyard Recursive card, and a Yoshin Frontliner for one that we have to have an Energy Refractor on board to unearth, but still going to be easily castable up front and going to be a good aggressively statted creature there. So nice aggressive curve of creatures overall, and the very solid splash for Skyfisher Spider as just a really powerful 2-for-1 play, destroying any non-land permanent by sacking a creature when it hits the board, and that card also works super well with Emergency Weld, which also just works well with all of our high-value creatures like our 3 copies of Junkyard Genius. So pretty solid stuff there. For our non-creature stuff, we've got those Energy Refractors to get the Skyfisher Spider in and to help unearth the Ocean Frontliner. We've got a Soul Guide Lantern to trigger our Goblin Blast Runners and our Gixian Infiltrator while drawing us a card. And we have a little bit of interaction like you always do. Disfigure, Powerstone Fracture, and Unleash Shell. Last but not least, a Sibling Rivalry to try to beat our opponent down with their own creature, and then sacrifice it to one of our Junkyard Geniuses. So that is the deck list for today. Looks like a pretty sweet one. Without further ado, let's head into the gameplay, see how it does. Alright, here we are for game 1 with a very nice hand. Turn 1 Frontliner, turn 2 Scrapwork Mutt to get things started, and then an Emergency Weld later in the game, and a Sibling Rivalry to hopefully finish our opponent off at a later time. Our opponent is on blue with a turn 1 Combat Courier, exceptional card. That is going to hold the Frontliner off for now. Discard a Swamp to draw a card because we don't have any double black cards, but we do have double red. And we draw into a Junkyard Genius to go with our Sibling Rivalry, and even if they blow it up, we've got an Emergency Weld in hand, so that should be really sweet. Thran's Spider is the draw. Don't know if I want to run that out immediately here and give our opponent a Power Stone this early in the game. I'd rather just play Junkyard Genius for now. Send both in, have the Frontliner trade into Courier, that'd be fine. Now that we're getting the extra damage out of the Frontliner, having the Scrapwork Mutt attack in for 3. Uh-oh, combat trick? Or just chump. Chump, draw a card, fair enough. So we just get some damage in, keep our creatures on the board, drop a Junkyard Genius, and pass the turn from there. We are at 4 out of 7 mana for Sibling Rivalry plus Junkyard Genius Sacrifice now, because the Genius can use a mana from the Power Stone for its ability. You kind of only need 6 lands on the board to be able to Sibling Rivalry plus sacrifice a creature when you have a Junkyard Genius out. Airlift Chaplain from our opponent. They mill 3, pick up a creature's mana value 3 or less. Or let this be a 2/2, either way. They are going to pick up an Ambush Paratrooper, so the Chaplain is a 1/1. Drawn to a Gurgling Anointer, no card draw in the hand, so I think Thran Spider is going to be a little bit more exciting here. I could just sack the Power Stone and hit for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the Genius itself doesn't get buffed, so I guess I do still attack with it and they just chump with Chaplain. That'd be okay. I think I'd like to make a wider board state first, though, before I start using Genius. Could attack with everybody and trade Frontliner into Chaplain. That would still be fine, but I'm just going to get my free 2 damage in and not put the Frontliner at risk right now. Our opponent unearths their Combat Courier to draw another card off of it. That'll soak up most of their mana. They've got 4 mana up when you count the Powerstone. Well, let's see the combat trick here. No combat trick, maybe a post-combat burn spell of some kind? Oh wow. So they just unearth the courier to attack with it, let me block and kill their thing with Spider? Now I don't even have to sack anything to attack with everybody. They just have an ambush paratrooper for a 1/2 blocker and that's it. Okay. So they kill my frontliner with a 1/2 blocker, but then they take a ton of damage? They gotta have some other kind of instant here. Okay, there's the ambush paratrooper. And then I could still just sacrifice a Powerstone here. Hit for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Just do that twice in a row, probably the kill. Sure. They could still trump the Junkyard Genius, I guess. They're not going to trump the Junkyard Genius, so they're down to 6. We've got no creatures or artifacts in grave for our emergency weld, so we have to just pass after doing that. But it puts them down to 6, so I think it's worth it. They just have to have a removal spell, pretty much. There's a Wing Commando. So they have 2 blockers. They can double block one of our creatures. I guess I could also just go for a sibling rivalry at this point. Again, I won't be able to sacrifice what I steal, but that would put them down to 1 blocker. They block the 3/2 Scrapwork Mutt, take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage. It's not quite lethal, because Frontliner has to buff something that isn't itself. So technically I only get lethal if I sacrifice to Junkyard Genius again. But I think Sibling Rivalry plays a little better against potential interaction from them. Still just gotta go for it here, I think. If I have lethal on board, just try to get lethal. Where if I give my board Menace, then it's 2 3-power Menace creatures, a 2-power Menace creature, and then Frontliner gets to buff something. They can only block one of them. So they block whichever one I buff up to being a 4-power Menace creature and take exactly 7 damage. 3 from Scrapwork Mutt, 2 from Junkyard Genius, 2 from Yoshin Frontliner. And I assume we're getting roped right now, so I think we just have lethal, but we'll find out next turn. Alright, now we definitely have lethal. What a draw. Because Junkyard Genius gives everybody haste when I do this. So that makes it even easier. Alright, our opponent did indeed completely leave the game. They've timed out of all of their last few decisions there, so we are going to be 1-0 to start things off. Really showing off the power of Junkyard Genius. Happy to have 3 copies of that in here. That is going to be a big deal. Game would have gone drastically different if they had just like 1 removal spell to kill the Junkyard Genius, so pretty lucky stuff to start it off. Here we are for game 2. Pretty bad mana here, no black source for the 3 black cards in hand, but I can play Yoshin Frontliner on 1, Thran Spider on 3. Still pretty awkward. I'm going to take the mulligan here. Alright, this is much better. Get rid of the Unleashed Shell and just curve out with all this. If this were a Scrapwork Mutt instead of an Ashnod's Harvester, I would have pretty happily gotten rid of a land here, but without any ways to draw a card or discard a card and draw a card or anything like that to guarantee the lands, I think I have to just get rid of the 5-drop. And guarantee that we're curving out 1, 2, 3. Ooh, Coastal Bulwark out of the blue deck. Pretty annoying blocker. 3/3 defender, plus it can sit there surveilling for the future. So which would I rather have die first? Probably the transmigrant, actually. Since when I unearth the transmigrant, it sticks around forever instead of just for a turn. So we'll drop the transmigrant to offer the trade into the bulwark. Our opponent is on blue-black. That is an archetype with some cards that are focused on drawing 2 a turn. Oh my god, sculpting skill the bulwark now? I'm guessing, yep. Double bulwark, shields are up. Shields are absolutely up. Even if I give everybody Menace with Junkyard Genius, they just double block with 2 bulwarks and only lose one of them, so... Get in there, I guess, Transmigrant. The game plan is going to be unearthing that thing over and over again and trying to rip through all of their defenders, which we're getting pretty close to, because next turn I have 4 lands and a Powerstone, which is 5 out of the 6 mana needed for the Transmigrant. So kind of just 1 land away, or 1 Powerstone away. What on earth is this thing? Whenever another non-token artifact control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a tapped Powerstone. So they start getting mana ramp here if they're trying to play some like 10 mana artifact creatures. That could be an issue. That could be a very big issue, if I'm being honest. I'm gonna draw the card from Refractor and drop Harvester instead of playing Gigamole, because I really want to hit lands more than anything. And there we go. Now I can reanimate Transmigrant next turn. Scrapwork Rager, solid value play. And this is going to be a 4/2, so they are going to have good blocks for that. If I sack something to make it Menace, though, it'll have 5 power, and they'd have to double block it since it has Menace, so we'd kill both their creatures on a double block. Quicksilver Amulet, oh my god, they are going deep. Slagstone Refinery and Quicksilver Amulet, so they're probably running like all of the really high mana cost prototype cards, so we might just get absolutely nuked out of this game. Could see that being a thing, so I think we need to just start getting really aggressive from here on, so I can play a Gigamole and then give it Haste Menace as our most aggressive line. Okay. That's not horrible for me, because that means they only have 1 card left in their hand. So there's only potentially 1 big scary prototype creature. So if I do the Genius thing, they double block and kill Blast Runner or Harvester, and I only kill one of their 2 things. But they take 9 damage from the other 2 creatures. Worth it? I think so. I think it's worth it. Not a lot of instant sorcery recursion in this format. It's all like creatures and artifacts. Get rid of the bigger, more annoying one here. Get rid of the 3/3, plus that one can't unearth. Alright, they're down to 10. See if they've drawn one of their gigantic prototype artifacts. There are 10, 12 mana artifacts in this format. If they've drawn any of them, that's bad. If they haven't drawn any of them, though, that means they have like 3 dead cards on board that just don't do anything. The Quicksilver Amulet can be used at instant speed, but they only have 3 mana up, which isn't enough. Alright, Powerstone Fracture means we have lethal on board here, so we just go for it. One card in hand, we'll see if it can save them here. and it can't save them. I think we probably had lethal on board even without the fracture if I just used the Genius's ability, but that was scary. Obviously, we were just pretty far ahead the whole time, pretty easily just slammed in for all the damage, but they had a lot of tools over there for spitting out a gigantic artifact creature. They were going deep on all those cards, but they didn't draw into their giant artifact creature, so these cards all kind of just fell flat and really worked in our favor, them playing 3 cards that just didn't affect the board. Those were just like 3 more creatures or removal spells or something. There'd be much more of a back and forth there, but we got pretty lucky. They hit all of their enablers for their giant creatures and none of their giant payoffs. So solid luck yet again in round 2. We are 2-0 as we head into game 3. Here we are for game 3. Skyfisher Spider could definitely be awkward here. We've got Disfigure and Transmigrant for our early plays. Do not think this hand is worth a mulligan. Playing against a red deck, now we've got an Emergency Weld, which is really nice with the Skyfisher Spider if we can find one of our Energy Refractors or our Forest. That will be exceptional. Playing against red-black, the mirror match is here. There's a Feldon. Neither of us can block. Let's go. That is the kind of magic I am all about. Let's just get in there. Should almost definitely just disfigure Feldon, but I can wait a little bit on it because red and black don't really have any combat tricks that buff toughness. I guess there's one. There's the Moment of Craving. There's +1 toughness. But generally not really. Alright, so we kill Feldon there. Here's a Scrapsmith. Picks up a well of nonsense? If they gain life, they can draw extra cards. Oh, so they must be running the +2/+1 lifelink combat trick then, for that to make any sense. Alright, well that could be massive card draw for sure. Don't have the green source for Spider, which is awkward. Both of these can unearth, so we do just send in the squad. Feels a little sad, but I've got the Emergency Weld as well, so I guess I just weld back up whatever dies here so that I can keep committing to the board this early in the game, keep the pressure on. Cool. So weld back the Transmigrants, because I'm still 2 turns away from reanimating it and have no other plays these next several turns without just doing that. There's a Thraxodemon for another card to trade off. There's a Thran Spider, which gives our opponent the Powerstone to use the well, but it also makes us 1 mana away from using the Thran Spider. And it's the only way that we add more to our board. So, I mean, we definitely got to do that here. Awkward as it is. Also gives us enough mana to reanimate the Transmigrant if it dies. So it feels like Thran Spider's ability is going to come back to bite us a lot more in this game than it did before. Although they did just hit the 4th land, so now they just have the well mana. Ew, Carrion Locust against my Harvester. That's rude. Definitely rude. Actually, it would have been more rude if they traded with Transmigrant and then did that. Alright, and as you can see, Thran Spider comes back to bite us very hard. Because now they get to play Mutt and Locust. It's way better than their alternative. And we didn't hit the land for the Spider. We didn't hit anything to reanimate off Gigamole. We hit 2 mana sources and the green source for Skyfisher Spider. Rough. Those all would have been fantastic draws. That is super awkward. They could double block, kill the Spider, but they lose both creatures if they do. And 1/1 for a 1/1 is fine. Transmigrant for any of these is fine unless they're running like a million Carrion Locusts. There's a Mine Worker with the Well of Lost Dreams going deep with the well, I see. So they gain a life every turn, draw a card every turn. That's some spice. That's definitely some spice. They gotta just go for the Gigamole right now, though, to defend themselves, and they get a Bomb Mythic Mishra claimed by Gix that will probably kill us. We've got some removal in this deck. If I draw into removal to deal with that, we'll be fine. We need to draw Unleash Shell or Powerstone Fracture, but if I don't, we are gonna die. Because they drain us for life equal to the number of attacking creatures every turn, plus a 3/5 body is nice and chunky. And with that life drain, they're triggering their Well of Lost Dreams, which is not good for me at all. Okay, I don't have the mana to do Thran Spider. I don't have the mana to play Blast Runner and Transmigrants. I guess I just play the Transmigrant, but then they have a 3/5 to block it. I attack with Gigamole, they double block and kill it. I only kill one of their creatures. I attack with Thran Spider, they can just bounce off there. Attack with both, they kill this one, take 2. Probably not worth it. We just need to find like a Junkyard Genius. We've got 2 outs mainly. The best one I think would be Junkyard Genius, where we just kill them. But if we draw removal for Mishra, then we'll still be in this game. But we need to draw one of those 2 cards very quickly here. Otherwise, Mishra and this Well are going to take over the game. And ideally, we got to draw one of our 3 Junkyard Geniuses, because if we hit one of those, then we just close out the game. That's the only way we know we can outrace the Well of Lost Dreams life gain synergies. Alright, Mishra's down, no good attacks. Again, 3 Junkyard Genius in here, every one of those is just instant lethal. And that is the big hope. So here's the Well. This is where we really need to hit. This is the really pivotal turn. That is kind of the difference between a win and a loss. Just from here on, they're going to start getting massive value from the Well, plus Mishra and Mineworker. Drawing 2 cards this turn, one off of Mishra, one off of Mineworker. Alright. Still no Junkyard Genius yet. Have any attacks on this board? If I attack all, kill Transmigrant for free, trade into the 3/1, block there, they take like 4 damage, wipe most of our board, keep most of theirs, keep 2/3 of theirs, we lose 2 creatures, they lose 1. It's not viable still. I guess the free kill on Transmigrant, we can just reanimate that, so we kind of mainly lose 1 creature. Still only hits for like 3 or 4. There's just a disgusting amount of value right now. Got this whole assembled Rube Goldberg machine, and we've just drawn 0 removal to interact with it. So it is just going to keep popping off. Oh my god, they have Mishra and the Dragon Engine, and we top deck land, so we are going to get blown up by Mishra lost to Phyrexia. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, choose 3. Give our whole board -1/-1. give their whole board Menace Trample, destroy an artifact or planeswalker, deal 3 to any target. Somebody discards 2. Okay, so we just lost because they have these 2 together. They just attack with both, wipe my whole board because they give everything -1/-1, and then shoot, I don't know, one of these for 3. Well, they did the thing. They did the thing. Rough stuff, but that is certainly magic. At least we get crushed by the, like, Mishra Titan. That's super cool. This will be my first time, I think, actually seeing one of these things get flipped in Limited. So that'll be pretty cool. I think they just show up as a regular sized card. I don't know. I know most of you have probably seen them flipped because you've seen them in Constructed and stuff, but I don't think I've ever actually seen one flipped. Let's see it get all massive here. Nah, it's just normal size. That's so sad. That's so boring. Gotta make it gigantic. Come on. Alright. Well, again, I think this game was pretty rough overall. We had a good amount of like lands and spells and stuff, but we had so many outs to win. And I think the matchup is generally favorable because their deck's a little slower and a little focused on like these big synergy things where aggro decks can really get in under and get through. Especially ones with 3 Junkyard Geniuses, but if we don't hit them, then we can't stop their nonsense. We don't hit the geniuses or the mana for our removal. So yeah, they're just going to clear out our board here. Clear out our 1/1s. Destroy our Spider and Transmigrant. Oh, I should have used it in response. Technically, but the game's over regardless because our one big out isn't an artifact. So we just dig and find some nonsense. Our artifacts that are still in the deck are Scrapwork Mutts, an Energy Refractor. I guess finding an Energy Refractor would be fine. But with their Well of Lost Dreams, they are 6 cards ahead now. Even if I top deck Energy Refractor to Skyfish or Spider the Mishra, we're losing. I mean, they're kind of 7 cards ahead because they can still Mind Worker, draw another off of the well also. Yeah, there's literally no outs. We're just playing it out. Just to go through the motions here. Obviously, technically, strictly better to use Thran Spider there. But there's a 0% chance that that leads to victory for us at this point in the game. Unless my opponent mills himself out. Maybe that was the out. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Even if we kill Misha, we're definitely dying to the creatures they're dumping out here. Oh, oh, snap. Snap, crackle, pop. That's pretty cool. Wait a second. I don't think this kills them. But Menace Trample -1/-1 to their board means they can't block with anybody? 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 damage? Wait a second. If they don't have instant speed removal, maybe it does. Wait. There's no shot. They could have Disfigure. They've got 1 black mana up. If they have Disfigure, they're fine. They just Disfigure the Transmigrant. Okay, I think the only way they survive is with Disfigure, right? So I get 3 of these things? Menace Trample, -1/-1, 3 damage to their face? Could do 3 damage to Gigamole instead, but I think I do 3 to the face and Menace Trample. Now even if they blow up Transmigrant, they take 9, 10, 13 exact lethal. Wait, what? Whoa! Wait, they could have... What? They had the overwhelming remorse. I mean, I guess they proved to us that if they had disfigure, then they were still going to die because they could disfigure the Transmigrant, but then they take all this and go to exact 0. But is there any reason they can't just exile Mishra there? Exile target creature or planeswalker, that can exile Mishra. I think they just died to maximum greed. They're like, no. If I can't have it back, I'd rather die. They could have just exiled Mishra and then... Sure, they don't get it back, but... They don't die. I guess, I mean, that might have put us in a winning position either way, because we did clear out, like, the whole board. All right. Well, that was complete insanity. I don't understand any of that happened in the last couple turns. I wasn't even considering sibling rivalry as an out there. But I guess, yeah, sibling rivalry on a Mishra that's flipped is absolutely insane. I mean, I said it myself. You heard my commentary. I was convinced we had a 0% chance of victory at that point. So I was just going through the motions. But, yeah, sibling rivalry on a flipped Mishra, I guess, is absolutely insane. So I'll have to keep that in mind if we ever see that again. That's our one big out in those games. Good lord. I mean, as I was saying before, we would have had... we had a lot of ways to close out that game. Had we hit a Junkyard Genius or something earlier, that would help us break through there. More defensive board state and crack in for victory then, but since they managed to stabilize, all of those kind of outs were becoming less and less realistic as ways to win the game, so Arena gives us the one card that I think actually just does it, and sibling rivalry, absolute insanity there. We are now 3-0, at least a 50-50 win rate through this draft, but we'll see how far we can take it as we head into the fourth game. Here we are on the play for game 4. We've got a Goblin Blast Runner with a Soul Guide Lantern. It's pretty spicy. Get that menace attack whenever we need it. We're probably playing Energy Refractor on turn 2 though, just to be mana efficient. Save the Lantern for whenever we need menace to get in, which is not right now. Our 1-2 can easily swing right past their 1-1. Could hold it off on blocks if I really want to play the defensive, but that's not what this deck wants to do generally. And now we've got the Skyfisher Spider with the green source thanks to the Energy Refractor. There's a Phalanx Vanguard, so we are against blue-white soldiers. So it will be an aggro matchup here. I think Junkyard Genius not the craziest right now, but the Powerstone token lets us play Skyfisher Spider next turn. Although there's nothing I want to sacrifice to the spider, so I don't think I will. So I kind of like Transmigrant Soul Guide Lantern. Does this hit the board tapped? No. I guess this is better after the frontliners in their grave, but I don't think it'll be in the grave soon. I don't know. We'll just drop the Junkyard Genius for now instead. Maybe we can get an Unearth card into their grave before we Lantern. Probably not. Maybe a bit greedy. But this way we're also open to Skyfisher Spider if something insane happens and we need to do that. Well, let's try and see how we get combat tricked here. Zephyr Sentinel, they're just going to pick up the frontliner. That is fair enough. They can recast it here pretty easily. It's pretty good. Wow, this is actually a disgusting curve. That Zephyr Sentinel for a 3-2 flyer, that is pretty deadly. So we are definitely going to want to Skyfisher Spider soon. Since I have a land, I can play the Transmigrant. We can sack that to the Spider next turn. I can't do it right now, though. Alright, each player's got a really scary curve. There's a Combat Courier for some card draw, as well as triggering the Phalanx Vanguard for extra damage. Autonomous Assembler. There's another must-kill threat. Well, now I think I have to, like, blow up the Assembler. Feels like I have to blow up the Assembler and then trade Skyfisher Spider into the Sentinel. Do I have to trade a Junkyard Genius into a Vanguard at this point? If I don't, I'm going to 8 life. Yeah, we're on the defensive now. We gotta turn things around. Let's take that trade. Not a great trade, but I do have another Junkyard Genius and an Emergency Weld in my deck. So we have ways to get another one out here. Okay. So I can exile their Unearth card and I can Skyfisher Spider sacking a Transmigrant. I think that's the line. I don't think I can afford to attack with Transmigrant here. It's the odds of them blocking with Combat Courier are kind of high. Can't let that happen. I mean, I guess if they do block there, we could sack the Blast Runner instead and we can exile all their card draw. I don't think that's where it's at, though. Alright, we are hoping that we can trade Skyfisher Spider into the Zephyr Sentinel. And go from there. Take my 1 damage. Do I hold out hope for an Emergency Weld, or do I gain 3? Probably have to gain 3 here. Emergency Weld is one of my 28 cards, and that's the only card that could matter for having this in my graveyard still. Guess I have the Anointer if I make this 4 power, but that's not gonna happen. That's gonna take a long time. Yeah, I think I have to just gain the life here. If I hit an Emergency Weld, I'll still be able to get a Junkyard Genius back, which is fine. And I'm not likely to hit Emergency Weld. Powerstone Fracture is the draw. Not bad at all. Kind of want to play a Gurgling Anointer and draw a card off of Soul Guide Lantern rather than just play a Transmigrant right now. Do I want a Powerstone Fracture and Urza to keep them off of the card draw? Somewhat. I somewhat do. I guess if I do that, I'm not using Soul Guide Lantern this turn, because I have to use the Energy Refractor mana from the Power Stones. So I guess I'll give them a turn to use the Urza. Ooh, Scrapwork Mutt. Sick draw. I think I have to just play that out to be aggressive, even if I don't get the discard draw off of it this turn. Then I could sack that next turn and trigger the Anointer again after I unearth it. That could be spicy. They're down to 11. We still have our Junkyard Genius out, which is a big, big deal. Even if they kill the Junkyard Genius, now I could do some kind of crazy shenanigans to get my Mutt into the graveyard, reanimated to trigger the Anointer to have it 3 powers, so that when the Anointer gets sacked to something, we reanimate a Junkyard Genius. And now that they tapped the Anointer, we're definitely just going to do that. We're just going to go full shenanigans time, where we go... We say goodbye to Urza, sacking Scrapwork Mutt. Oh, I needed to not play a land. I needed to not play a land to discard a card to draw a card. Oops. Because then I would go Mutt. Okay, so I didn't have the mana to do that quite yet. Alright, that's a punt. I should have just brought back Transmigrant this turn, and then went for that next turn, because we would have had to have played the land to have the mana to do the Powerstone Fracture, and then have 2 mana to use Mutt and 3 mana to use Junkyard Genius. But the plan was going to be, then we use the Mutt, that triggers Anointer, makes it 3 power, then we use the Genius, sack the Anointer, get back the other Genius, and the board has Menace Haste, which is huge. So that was my idea. I just am bad at math. So I was 1 mana off from it, which means that it was better to Transmigrant and then try to do that next turn. Still looks like it's playing out okay for us. And there we go. Now I can just do it this turn with 1,000,000 mana. And that is the spicy, insane combo that I wanted to do a turn earlier, but couldn't. But it'll happen this turn, and we will still find the victory off of it. We are now 4-0, undefeated still, now at least breaking even, pretty much. 1,400 gems and a few packs as our prizes out of this very sweet premiere draft of the Brothers' War. Here we are for game 5 with a hand we definitely have to keep. I'm not actually that excited about it because we don't have anything to work with the Anointer, so the Anointer looks pretty awkward here. But now we just drew another 2 mana 3/1, so I'll probably just run those out turn after turn. I'll play the Transmigrant first. Rather have the card that can come back over and over and over again die than the one that only comes back once. We're playing against blue-red, which can be a very spell-centric deck. Lots of instant sorceries, non-creatures in general, but they're blue-red and black. A lot of cards to help facilitate splashing and multicolored decks in this format, because there are a lot of colorless cards, a lot of artifacts that can mana fix, which is very helpful. Our opponent drops in Archaeologist. It's just a 2 mana 1/4, but that is still a very big body. That's quite annoying for our 3/1s to get through. Drawn to a Junkyard Genius, exceptional draw, because that Powerstone is going to go a pretty long way for us. Letting us play an Ashnod's Harvester and a Gurgling Anointer in the same turn, some stuff like that. If I hit a land. Don't hit a land, but we can just cast another Junkyard Genius. Get another Powerstone. Not quite a land, but still fine. Somewhat close. Alright. They've definitely got instants. That was quite a bit of thinking in response to our Junkyard Genius. Don't know if they have counterspells. If they did, they probably would have countered a second Genius, but I guess the second, if they don't have removal for the first, is kind of redundant. Well, this is going to be an issue. This 1/4 is a massive roadblock for us, and it looks like their deck is full of gigantic artifact creatures. So once they start hitting these higher mana values, they're just going to start dumping out a board state that is incredibly difficult for us to deal with our smaller kind of deck here. Drop a Gurgling Anointer and an Ashnod's Harvester now. Just getting things nice and wide to start using Junkyard Genius every turn. So they've got the reanimation for the Cave Guard. How much ward does that have? Ward 4! Oh my god, okay. Ward 4 means I kind of have to just like try to outrace with 3 swings in a row or something, or I'm just super dead. Okay. So we're racing. I can tell you that. This is our best trump block for the Cave Guard. I mean, I take 8, 9, 10, 11 on the crackback. They can kill one of my creatures. 2 if I attack with the non-menace card. So we attack with everybody except the non-menace so that they can only block and kill one of my cards. And I hit them with everybody else, so if they block and kill the 4 power, they take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, we just do this twice in a row. That would be lethal. That's the plan. And I guess I just take everything on the crackback. Exile the War Plow in case they have another reanimation spell. Okay, they're going to kill a Junkyard Genius, so they might have removal for the other one. That would be an issue, because I don't have the mana to emergency weld back a Junkyard Genius and use its ability. So there's a Burnished Heart. The 8/8 has Vigilance, so they can definitely at least hit us for 8. But the rest of their attacks they do have to consider. Their blocks pretty heavily. Alright, I take my 8 down to 12. And they pass turn. I guess I'm technically 1 mana off from Sibling Rivaling the Suchi Cave Guard, because Powerstones can pay for that. It's kind of cool. 7 mana. 2 to play Emergency Weld, 3 to play Genius, and then 3 to use a Genius ability. So I'm 1 mana off from that as well. Also 1 mana off from playing Unleash Shell and using a Junkyard Genius effect. If I Sibling Rivalry even just a Thopter mechanic, that puts them down to 1 block against the Menace board. Oh, but then I don't have a red and a black up, so I can't do that. Because I have to have red and black mana up to use Junkyard Genius. So I guess my only line then is to use Junkyard Genius twice. Or Emergency Weld and use Junkyard Genius. And I think it's better to Weld and use Genius for another attacker. So let's do that. Plus then I have a backup Genius. Although if I don't kill them this turn, I'm going to die on the crackback. But let's try hasting this thing into a 2/1 Menace and finding lethal right here, hopefully. I mean, it's lethal or we're dead. We'll see. Oh my god, Urza's rebuff is incredible here. I guess we're not dead now, though, because we know about that. So we just don't attack then. Because they double block kill the 3/4, double block kill the 2/1, take 4. Okay. And it's not the worst in the world. If they had something that would have stopped 2 of our attackers after we've declared the attack, then we would just straight up die here, because then we wouldn't have blockers. At least now we get to see that they have that before we declare our attack, because they had to cast it pre-combat. So we know that we can't just attack with everybody or we'll die, so. Not the worst thing in the universe, but definitely would have been much better to just find lethal immediately. And here's where having the second Junkyard Genius back with the Emergency Weld is going to be really helpful, because even if they find removal for the first one, I've got enough mana to play the next one and crack the Powerstone. And they're just going to go digging. All card draw here. Don't have any creatures in my grave for Anointer. No, I just have Emergency Weld, so. Do I play it safe against a blue combat trick? I don't think so. I think there's going to be a +4/+0 blue combat trick here. Alright, we've got a Disfigure. But I'm just going to play another attacker. Give that haste and the whole board Menace. And do the thing. Doesn't really matter what I exile. None of these are even creatures. I'll just hit the sorcery. Okay. They're dead on board. And they are gonna be dead there, so that is another victory off of just a bunch of Junkyard Genius shenanigans. Our opponent had a pretty fun Grixis like Reanimator strategy that did pop off. They got a turn 5 8/8 Vigilance Ward card, but Junkyard Geniuses with a wide board state still can just find that damage around the gigantic blocker and help us close out that game. So we are 5-0 now, in the money as we head into Game 6. Here we are for Game 6, and we are curving out. We're on the draw, so we're not curving out instantaneously, but 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, and so on. Really nice start to the game. We'll see what our opponent's doing over there. They've got a forest. They have a turn 1 Sentinel Stalwart, turn 1 Bushwhack. Gonna go ahead and fix their mana, but they grab another forest, so they must have something that wants a lot of green mana. Hopefully it's not a Clay Champion, which is the mythic rare that we passed up during our draft. Ooh, Root Wire Amalgam it is. Needs double green to reanimate from the grave, but when it does... Oh, it doesn't reanimate from the grave. It's from the board. So they sacrifice it. Sacrifice their 2/3 to get a 6/6 with haste. Yikes, okay. That is beefy. 2 mana 2/3 and then a 5 mana 6/6. Alright. That's not ideal. I have a hard time chipping through that. I don't have anything I want to discard to my Mutt right now, plus it doesn't get through the Amalgam, so I'm just going to Refractor. Dig for some potential removal to clear out this Amalgam before it becomes a 6/6, or after it becomes a 6/6, that's fine too. But that thing is spooky. That is some beef. Very cool artwork too. Okay, well, we hope they don't have a counterspell, and then we get to play a 3/1 to trade into the Amalgam on blocks, so at least they don't attack us with it this turn. That is probably the play. It's definitely not Thran Spider, because then they can use the Powerstone we give them to sack the Amalgam next turn. They just immediately do that. Alright, no counterspell. Infantry's on the board, ready to stop the Root Wire Amalgam from hitting us. There's a Battery Bearer. So they are green-blue ramp. If they cast a bunch of big artifact spells, mana value 6 or greater, they get to draw cards. And all of their creatures now can tap to cast their artifacts as well. That's super scary. Do not love not having removal right now. That's a pretty big issue. I still really don't want to give them a Power Stone, so I'm just going to discard the Thran Spider and a Gixian Infiltrator, and if I end up really wanting one of those 2 cards, I can Emergency Weld one back. Okay, I'll discard a land over the Infiltrator this time. But we're digging for removal, because these are a lot of like must-be-killed threats, and not finding any removal. Well, we could still be on that classic Junkyard Genius game plan. If we find a Junkyard Genius and we have a wide board state, we can kind of just disregard whatever our opponent's doing and try to menace in for the kill. So they have 7 mana for artifacts right now. If they have something really big. Rust Goliath is the play. Dropping it as a 5-drop though. So luckily we don't see the 10 mana version of that, and we don't see them drawing a card off of it with Battery Bearer, so I'm actually pretty okay with that. Pretty dang okay with that. We draw into a Sibling Rivalry, but we have no way to sacrifice anything right now. Let's drop the Gigamole. It digs 3 cards deeper to find Junkyard Genius. Find a Harvester and a Frontliner, so no Junkyard Genius. I do want a wider board state, so I will pick up the Frontliner, I think. I'd rather reanimate the card I don't have to use Energy Refractor to reanimate, but I guess either of these are both 2 mana to Unearth. So they're both just as hard to reanimate in terms of the quantity of mana I have to spend. Frontliner being only 1 mana, though, makes it really easy to fit in alongside whatever else I'm trying to cast. Alright, we still gotta find a Junkyard Genius really quickly, otherwise they're getting close to a position where they can afford to just slam in with like 1 gigantic creature while holding the rest of their board back. We've got a really wide board state, so they do have to be a little worried, but overall... they really just need 1 more big creature to attack with something every turn, and they probably have that if they are attacking with Rest Goliath here. Or at least a combat trick to make it so we can't kill the Goliath on blocks. Jalum Tome? Not really worried about that. Draw a card, discard a card every turn. I mean, it's good, it's looting. I guess with the Battery Bearer, it's actually very good because they don't actually really have to spend mana on it. They just tap their 2 creatures they're holding up as blockers anyway. Alright, I don't have any card draw at all. Maybe chump attacking with Scrapwork Mutts is where it's at. Does not feel like it. Probably have to play an Infiltrator and a Frontliner and hold up a Disfigure now. With a Disfigure up, do I attack with everybody? I gotta start chipping in, even if I don't draw into Junkyard Genius. I should have a game plan that doesn't revolve around that 1 card. I guess I'm halfway through the deck, so realistically speaking, we should find it soon. I think I should try to get some damage in here, though. So maybe we can just go wide even without the Menace for a few swings to find the kill, especially with a Sibling Rivalry. If they end up playing a 10-10 version of Rust Goliath, then Sibling Rivalry can be a win condition if we chip them down a bit first. So we do have to go wide and find some damage to turn that into another out. Should definitely be trying to find ways to close out the game with the cards that we actually have access to, instead of exclusively relying on a theoretical top deck. So, if there's a way to potentially push in for lethal with these cards, we should try to do it. And this would be the best way to do that. So what do I disfigure here? Do I kill the Amalgam so they can't get a 6/6 haste? Or do I kill the Battery Bearer to get rid of their mana and their card draw? Their mana doesn't seem super important at this point, and if it is to where they are going to play like a 10 mana artifact creature, that's just good for us. Because we'll steal it and hit them with it, so I think we disfigure the Amalgam and beat that one. Okay. Giant Growth is fine. We'll lose the Scrapwork Mutt, which is chill because it's got the Unearth. We still hit for 5. They're down to 14. Alright, not exceptional, but we still have a big enough board state to just kill them if we find a Junkyard Genius. Because we've got 2 Unearthers still. And we are chipping away so that 1 more just Sibling Rivalry to steal a giant 10-10 and attack with everybody kills them. Okay, they're going to make a 6/6 that doesn't have Vigilance. Oh, that's bold. They're at 14 here. If I rivalry the Battery Bearer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's so close. Oh my god, it's literally 1 damage off. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. God dang it, what do I do then? Since it's not lethal. And even if I draw a land, it's not lethal because I need 2 mana to unearth these. Probably have to chump with a Frontliner. Stop the 6, since at least it has Unearth. 1 off. Oh, that would be so sick. 1 life off, 2 mana off, so would be the kill here. Well, I can definitely get there over several swings here, because the 6/6 doesn't have trample, so we just block with an Unearther again, block with the Scrapwork Mutt. We have to leave Blast Runner back against Battery Bearer anyway. I guess it's just hard to get through Battery Bearer, period. If I unearth a frontliner, I attack with infantry as a 4-power creature into the battery bearer. They just block the frontliner, take 4 there. Could emergency weld back something. It's 2 mana to unearth anything. So I could weld back the frontliner, play the frontliner, and unearth something else. I think that's what I'll do. Save the sibling rivalry for surprise lethal. But frontliner is the only thing that I could weld back, cast, and still unearth something else this turn. We only lose 1 creature here. And I've got 2 blockers up. 2 blockers is probably enough. Send in with everybody else. So we just trump the 6/6. And unless they have like a big trample trick that gives it like plus a bunch of extra power and trample, we should be able to chump next turn and then kill them next turn with sibling rivalry. Alright, they're down to 5. They're down to 5. It's basically they kill us this turn or we kill them next turn. The 2 main ways I think this game's gonna go. There's a Saren Steelseeker for another blocker. I guess if they just play a couple more blockers and then don't attack, then we just sit here. Yeah, 1/2 and a 2/5. We only have to hit them for 5 to kill them. They can't attack too much here. I think they can afford to do that. So they're at 5. If I rivalry the 3/5, I guess, they have 3 blockers total. Block there, block there, block the 3/5. They would take 1, 2, 3, 4 damage. If I hit the mana to unearth the mutt, then I kill them in 1 swing. Because they block a 3-power creature, a 3-power creature. They block a 3, and a 3, because frontliner? No, they block a 3, and a 2. We make frontliner make a 1-power creature a 2. Block there, there, there. They would take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I'm going to take the damage, shooting for top deck land. Okay, so rivalry the 3/5. We're about to find out how bad at math I am here. Three blocks. They block a 3/3, a 3/3, and a 2-power creature. Take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's lethal. In my mind. We'll see if it's lethal in practice. Alright. It is lethal. Sibling Rivalry MVP. Back at it again. Excellent, excellent stuff. Definitely pretty happy with my decision to actually just start using my wide board state to chip in for some damage there, so even if I don't find one of my Junkyard Geniuses, I've got a plan for winning that game, because if I just sat there holding up blocks every turn, we just keep getting edicted, lose a creature every single turn, chumping and chumping and chumping and chumping. Probably a bad spot. So, alright. Real solid stuff there. Just drew a ton of creatures, went really wide, found another victory. I think we are 6-0 now, still undefeated, now getting major prizes, 1,800 gems and 5 packs, and only 1 victory away from a full value 7-win run. See if we can't get the last victory as we head into the final boss. Here we are for game 7, undefeated so far. This could be the final game, and we've got an excellent curve. 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop. Love just running things out. The Thran Spider's been a little awkward. Everybody has found some good value off the Power Stones. on average, so don't love that we're going to be giving our opponent one of those, but that's fine. That's fine. I could just discard the spider to draw a card with the Scrapwork Mutt, but I think I'm just going to jam out a 3-power creature. Put as much power on the board as quickly as possible. It's about to get disfigured. Nope. Curate. Surveil 2, draw a card for our opponent. They're on blue-black, which is the draw 2 archetype in this format. There's a lot of cards that get some benefits if you've drawn 2. Like our Gurgling Anointer that we have in our deck that gets a +1/+1 counter every time we've drawn 2 cards in a turn. Well, send in the squad for 5 damage here. That's pretty big. Hold up this Disfigure, and then I think I am going to play Scrapwork Mutt over the Thran Spider. Just to not give my opponent a Powerstone here. Because the Mutt is also 2 power, and the only thing that matters on an empty board state is how much power my creatures have. Okay, they do have Disfigure, but they're going to wait till now to use it. Fair enough. There goes the Harvester. I actually should have played the Mountain over the Swamp. I forgot I have a double red card in this deck, but no double black. Okay, do I hold up Disfigure or just drop this Lantern? Let's just drop this Lantern. Get that mana investment out of the way so we can crack it and draw a card off of it soon. Scrapwork Rager. Okay, we can disfigure that. There's a Transmigrant. Solid. Okay, I'm not really worried about them reanimating the Rager since it won't be able to block, but I could still exile it with Harvester for value anyway. I think I'd rather get a permanently attacking creature on the board than do that, because if they spend next turn not getting a blocker out, just losing a life and drawing a card, I think that's just a net positive for us. So let's drop the Transmigrant and probably draw a card off of the Lantern during their end step. I guess I could just do it right now. Yeah, so they're in a position where they have to just spend their mana playing any kind of blockers that they have. Oh, wow, that was a great draw. Archaeologist, 2 mana, 0/3 plus Disfigure to their hand. Incredible stuff from the Archaeologist here. I think I could have cracked this in could I? I actually think you can't. Yeah, I don't know for sure. I don't think I had an opportunity to respond to that with the Lantern. I might be wrong on that, but I think since it's all part of the same abilities resolution, you can't, like, exile their graveyard in response. Well, I can blow up the Archaeologist. I don't really need to. Just attack them with several 3-power creatures. We just let them disfigure the Transmigrant. Yeah, let's just play Harvester and Spider and save the Unleashed Shell for the future. But I gotta play Harvester pre-combat, so we'll do that. And then I might as well exile their Scrapwork Rager. Even if I do think it would be a very bad idea for them to unearth it right now. If the game manages to go long, if they stabilize well, it will be good value for them later. Alright, they probably do disfigure Mutt here. Although Transmigrant's permanently 3 power. Alright, they're down to 9. Here's a Thran Spider. Or another creature. And here's where I think discarding a Mountain over a Swamp earlier could come back to bite me. Because if I had triple red, I could Unleash Shell and unearth a Scrapwork Mutt here, thanks to my Powerstone. If I top decked any land, but now it's only if I top deck a Mountain that I get to play both these spells. Well, play this spell and activate this ability. There's a Weakstone Subjugation, keep the Transmigrant down. Junkyard Geniuses are going to be great against that. Thopter's not a worry at all, and speak of the devil. And he says, what's up? I mean, I'm just going to do it. Get that transmigrant in our graveyard to reanimate. Hit them for 6 that they can't block. They're down to 3. I've got Unleash to shoot them for 2. I've got Scrapwork Mutt in the grave for hasty 2 damage. Got a Transmigrant to reanimate as well. There's an Overwhelming Remorse. Exile that Junkyard Genius. Gotta do it now before we can use its ability, so they do. Emergency Weld. Oh god, how I wish they just destroyed it instead of exiling it. Well, don't have enough red mana to Unleash and Scrapwork Mutt. But if I Unleash and I hit them for 1, they're dead, so I'll go for it. Kill the creature that can kill one of mine. Do that. I think Scrapwork Mutt also would have been lethal. No, unearthing Scrapwork Mutt would have been solid, but it would not have been lethal. If we unearthed the Scrapwork Mutt, we instead would be attacking with a 1/1, a 3/5, and a 3/2 against their 2/1 and their 0/3. So they'd have to chump both of the 3 power creatures, but because they wouldn't take the 2 damage from Unleash, they would just take 1 from Frontliner and go to 2 life total. So that was the only way to threaten lethal that turn, so worked out for us. They ran out of stuff. We just kept doing aggressive nonsense. And this was just some beautiful stuff from this Rakdos sack deck overall. I think pretty much everything in the deck performed incredibly well, about how we expected. Maybe even a bit of an overperformer of a deck. I don't know if I thought we would 7-0 with this one, but I thought it was pretty solid. The biggest underperformers in the deck are the Thran Spider, because our opponents got some good value out of Powerstones a couple times, and the Skyfisher Spider, because our mana base was pretty awkward for it. Might have been a little greedy trying to get there off of just 3 green sources. Maybe should have played another forest for like 4 green sources. I do think I should have been running it, but we certainly had a game where it was just stranded in our hand the whole game, and that was quite awkward, especially because like Gigamole ended up milling one of our green sources. That certainly wasn't helpful either. So these were kind of the biggest underperformers. Biggest overperformer overall, if I had to pick just one card, goes to Sibling Rivalry, because there was that game where I don't think any other card, maybe even in the entire set, would have won us that game. But when we get to steal their flipped Mishra claimed by Phyrexia and jam in, get all 3 abilities back at them, that was insane. But part of that was also our opponent just deciding to die. Right, because they had the Overwhelming Remorse, so they could have technically survived that play if they just exiled their own Mishra, but I guess they really just didn't want to do that. That's fair. They've got some convictions right there. That is more than I have, so yeah, I mean, Sibling Rivalry, it was pretty awesome every time it showed up as well. It helped find us some other victories, not just that one incredibly memorable one, but everything else, I mean, it did its job. Really good stuff from the deck overall. Pretty happy with this run. Kind of hard to be unhappy with it when we haven't lost a single game. Grab our 2,200 gems, 6 packs, and call it a draft there. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you'd like to see some more videos like this, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link or the join button below. Other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.